So let's look at it from this perspective. So I'm going to try this way now. And I've explained it so many different ways. So let's look at a step-by-step process in which we can address the human condition. And if you look at, has anybody heard of the I Ching? Yep. Yeah? And the 64 phases in which we go through the process of being a human being. And we go through being basically unconscious to hopefully conscious, from inferior to superior human being. And there's a fundamental belief here now that we probably need. Some of us will agree, some of us will disagree, but this is what I have found. Generally, we come in true, but we don't really come in balanced or enlightened. It takes work to become, a human. We come in, it's very easy to be an animal. Does this make any sense? So you're not born good. You're just not. You're good, your nature's good, you're just an innocent little human being, but you're like an animal. So if you look at, I have a 3-year-old boy. Now, if you don't refine him, he's just going to crap in the living room, kill the rabbit next door, you know what I mean? Climb up the curtains. He's not bad, but he's a little animal. And so he needs to go through refinement. And if you don't, he's going to spend his whole life being an animal. And if you don't take the time to give him direction, in other words, meet him with principle and love, all he's going to be is a human being in form, pretty much an animal in action and in consciousness. And you have to earn your way out of being an animal. So you're born into a certain karma. So even before you get here in your little meat suit or even in the womb of your mother, there's a belief structure that you already made this agreement. What kind of equipment you're going to have and what kind of culture you're going to be with, what kind of resources, because that wood period, that 0 to 8, is so out of your karma or out of your control per se. It's karma, but not will of the living body. You totally rely on where you were born, who your parents are. It's just, hopefully you did good in your last life because that's where you were born now and what you were born with is a theory. And from there, you have to do the work and you have to earn whether or not you're just going to go through life in a state of unconscious suffering or you're going to go through life and evolve as a conscious being. So that's it. There's that struggle. And we all have the struggle. And it never ends, and it's never over, and you never nail it. It's like standing. You always have to work to stand. As soon as you stop working, you fall. So there is this constant struggle. So when we start talking about self-mastery and the path of self-mastery, I'm a master instructor. I've been doing this. I started my most basic training in the 70s. So think about that. So what? I'm not out of the woods. I could completely blow out. I can completely fail, and spend the rest of my life alone in suffering and in pain if I don't stay on line. So you never go with, look, Mom, no hands. It's a constant struggle. And so this is the piece we have to kind of accept that, no, we're not entitled to anything. If you want to change your reality, your government's not going to change it. There's no entitlements that are going to change it. You have to change it. It starts with you. And until you take that level of ownership, you have no control. It's a very important piece to understand. It's ultimately, if I look at a situation and I'm like, you are ruining my life, which he is kind of, if you get to know him. But, if I own that, then I'm screwed because there's nothing I can do. So it's not that. Ultimately, if I realize I'm letting him ruin my life and how I'm taking him, I'm giving him power. And until I see what I can do to change my reality, I have no freedom. I'm subject to the will of others. So mastery is about taking total ownership. You have a choice until death. And you got to make the choice every day and every minute. That's the tough part. And so we learn that in like yoga. Does anybody do yoga? Yeah? Good. Some do, some don't. And so when you stand and you're in the warrior position for way too long, That's teaching you how to defend yourself from the bad karma and how to burn karma. Because you're learning to stay there even though it hurts. So that's a fundamental discipline that you should have been taught as a child. Because we have a battle. So let's talk about this process. Because what will happen is, I have already touched all over the place. But it's really a deliberate equation. You don't get lucky. Everything has to be in there. It's like baking a cake. It's not random. It's got to be very deliberate. And so there's what they call an 8-fold path. And what we try to do in Master's Path is provide you with these 8-fold experiences and 8-fold levels of evolution of your own consciousness. And we do it in many, many ways. So what I'd like to do is give you a large picture so you can kind of see, aha, that's where that fits. I see where he's going with this. Because if you don't know, it seems like I'll talk a lot in circles. And it's like, what the hell does that, how does that tie in? But after a while, once you make it around a journey around the sun, and you go through all the seasons, and you're introduced to all of the core concepts, you'll see, it's reoccurring. There's a theme here. Like the first time you really start to look at and become aware of weather, you just think it's random as a child, but then you're like, oh, wait a second. Fall comes, and then, I see winter. Then you start to see the root power. It's not as confusing. Well, it's really the same thing here. At first it looks random, but it's really deliberate. So let's look at the first step. The first step is the hardest step, which is seeing yourself, which is kind of what I was talking about. So really what happens when you get started with this, whether you're online or you're showing up every day, I know immediately that the person's going through a challenge because I already see you. That's my job. My job is to identify the master in you, or as they call it, the ingan, or the highest expression of humanness. Namaste. I see the God in you. The problem is, in most cases, you don't. Because you don't even know what the God in you looks like. So you're already at a tremendous disadvantage. The advantage of training human beings all the time is like, I rebuild 67 Mustangs. I'm an expert. I know. So you come in with this old beater 67 Mustang, you're not impressed. I know it's amazing, it's beautiful, it can be rebuilt, and it's an awesome thing. But you're in it every day. So the first piece in this reflection is to actually look inside, which you're forced to do the first day you walk in. Because you're doing weird stuff, it's a little uncomfortable, you're out of your comfort zone, and you have to go through the humility of seeing yourself. That guess what? Your feet aren't aligned. Guess what? You're not coordinated. Guess what? Your legs are burning. Guess what? You don't get it. Guess what? And it's like, and so all of these layers of weakness are gently exposed. Believe me, it's not the way I was taught. There was nothing gentle. There was a spear tip, and you'll get in position or you'll leave. And that was it. And so, but the goal is to gently, the big mirror on squeaky wheels, put it in front of you, and hopefully you won't run away. And that's the hardest step. The first step is seeing yourself. And if you want to look at the foundation of the turbidity and chaos in our society and the current level of man, our culture, is we don't see ourselves. We don't want to take ownership for any of our behaviors. We're totally, no. We're in a very, very shallow culture. So looking inward at the highest level of humanness, no, not going to happen. So we get you to stand, we get you to move, we get you to sit. And during that time, you get glimpses, just glimpses of yourself. Very important piece, because most of the time, in order to see yourself, that's why they call it the reflection. In the old days, they didn't have mirrors. You'd actually have to look at water, and you'd get a reflection. But if it was turbid water, moving water, there would be you couldn't see yourself. Well, your mind is that water. And so you never really get a chance to see your true nature because it's never tranquil enough and never clear enough to reveal, even just give you a glimpse, a fleeting glimpse at your nature. This is an important piece because this nature, your higher nature, isn't your nature. It's my nature. It's her nature. It's all of our nature. It's the same nature. So we're all basically connected. And we all have one little dollop of that highest nature. And then it's momentarily separated. We suffer the illusion of individuality for a bit, and we do our stuff so that we can, of course, have manifestation of form. But we each do our time. Basically, formless consciousness, and those of you who heard this lecture many of times, wanting to exist, right, has to do time as unconscious form. Has anybody heard that conversation yet? I could spend 6 hours on that. But it's okay. What? No, I know what I'm just kidding.